In Titusville, a significant victory was achieved when the Right to Clean Water Charter Amendment was passed with an overwhelming 82% of the vote. This resounding support from the community demonstrates the strong commitment to ensuring access to clean and safe water. The residents of Titusville spoke with a united voice, setting an inspiring example for the entire state.
Unfortunately, the battle for clean water rights did not end with the vote. Despite the community's clear choice, the city of Titusville responded with a lawsuit against Speak Up Titusville, the nonprofit organization behind the charter amendment. This legal battle is set to go to court on November 16th, 2023.
Today, our guests are Melissa Martin, a Florida environmental attorney and the campaign coordinator for Florida Right to Clean Water, Karl Deigert, campaign manager for the Florida Rights of Nature Network, and Mike Myjak, who is one of the founders for Speak Up Titusville. Mike Myjak, I wanted to start with you, if that's okay, and I just wanted to talk a little bit about how you got involved in the Right to Clean Water Charter Amendment in the city of Titusville, and if you could provide an overview on what Speak Up Titusville's role is in this important cause.
Sure, be happy to. For me, it started, I believe, in January. It might have been February of 2017. Mel gave a talk on rights of nature to the Sierra Club down in Melbourne at the UU Church, and I was very inspired by what she had to say, because I thought finally we may have an approach that might actually save some land, some wetlands, and so when it went forward in Orange County, when Chuck O'Neill ran it up the flagpole through their Charter Review Commission, I got wind of it and started following and said, this is what we need to do in Titusville. And of course, during the time that they had it approved by the Charter Review Commission and the time it got voted, the state put a preemption clause in place that kind of put the kibosh on rights of nature aspect of it. So I got in touch with Mel, and Mel got me in touch with, oh gosh, I forgot his name, out there at Cedar.
Thomas Lindsay?
Yeah, Thomas Lindsay. And he was able to remove that defect, and we ran it up the pole, and I decided to go get a PAC started, and I got Tony and Tom and a couple others, and we all signed the paperwork and started out collecting petitions based on the petition that they ran in Orange County, sans the rights of nature aspect of it, which left it as a right to nature, our personal right to nature, which I have come to believe should be a fundamental right in this country. And it should be in our Bill of Rights. It should be national. It shouldn't just be state and local. But local is where things start, and local is what we did. So we put it up, we got the votes or the petition signed, and then the city decided a week before it was to go to the supervisor of elections that they were going to contest it. So we had to fight them in court to get it on the ballot. The city was trying to subvert that. And so the judge said there was only 6 days left, and that wasn't enough time to adjudicate a proper result, and we would be, our rights would be diminished in that case. So it went forward. The city voted to put it on the ballot, and it went to the supervisor of elections, and the rest is history. We got 82.5% or more of the people that voted for it. But the problem was that the city is supposed to accept the results of the supervisor of elections, the canvass of elections, they call it. And our own city charter stipulates that they will do so on the fourth Tuesday of the month, when they have their second meeting in November. And what they did was they wrote a special order that said, we're going to accept Herman Cole having won his seat on the city council, but we're going to sidestep this issue of this ballot, and we're going to contest it. And so that's what they did. They went and contested it in court. It came up before Judge Holcomb, and Judge Holcomb decided that we were in the right, that we had met our obligations. We got our petition signed. We met the deadlines by the supervisor of elections, and everything was on the up and up. And he even went so far as to say that the city had no say in the matter and what the amendment was. Even if they vehemently disagree with it, they must still approve it according to our current state statutes. And this is what we're going to be arguing in court. And Judge Holcomb said that that was what we did. We met our obligation, and the city should authorize it, and said that if we need assistance with either maybe getting our money back from the attorney fees or enforcement, I believe was the word he used, to let him know. And the next thing we know, the city filed for a rehearing. Actually, we had a hearing to have a rehearing, and now we're having the rehearing with, as I understand it, all of the facts are accepted as they were delivered. There's no dispute about what the facts are. So I don't know why they think they're going to get another ruling, or should get another ruling. If the facts are the facts, then things should flow in our direction. At least that's my hope. So that's where we stand. We should have the right to clean water in Titusville. And I'll tell you, one of the things that really irks me is that right now they're in the process of rewriting their comprehensive plan. And the comprehensive plan should say we have the right to clean water. The citizens have the right to clean water, and all the laws of the city should flow down from that. Now, this won't happen again for another 7 years. So if this happens now and we don't get it approved, or we continue to fight in appeals, this is going to happen, and it's going to be a change that we're not going to be able to go back and redo for another 6 or 7 years. So I'm kind of upset about that, because I really think the right to clean water belongs in our comprehensive plan and in our land development regulations. So
I agree with you. Let me ask you, what are the main challenges? What are their challenges to certifying the votes and amending the charter?
There's no challenge to certifying it. They have chosen not to. That's simply what they would rather fight. And for some reason, they must think that it's cheaper and possibly end up with a better outcome by fighting and winning than going forward and implementing. And I don't know why. The only thing I can speculate is that it has something to do with this enormous weight of development that's growing in our midst with the space industry and the lack of housing and all of that. It's just the push. It's money. It's greed, and it's money. Because we can't live without clean water. Come on, right? Nothing can live without.
Exactly. And as far as the litigation goes, there's an upcoming hearing, as we made an announcement before, on November 16th. Will Speak Up Titusville be present at that hearing in the courtroom, or how can people attend and participate or view that hearing if they want to do so?
Well, that's one of the issues that we're still trying to figure out. We were granted a virtual courtroom session, which would be done over the Teams system, the Microsoft Teams. And then everybody, like we did on the last hearing, the rehearing to have a hearing, everybody could join in and participate, at least listen. But now we've gotten enough contributions that we've been able to bring Richard in. So he's going to be in court. The city attorney and the attorney they hired will be in court, and so will the judge. So I don't know if they're even going to have a Teams meeting anymore, because the participants are all going to be there. So I'd hate to say, yeah, join the Teams thing, which I posted on Facebook weeks ago, but I don't know. You may have to come to the courthouse Tuesday or Thursday at 2:00 at the Titusville courthouse. It'll be one of the courtrooms. Like, we don't know which one yet. But come and make a scene. Yeah, we want clean water. We need to make a presence. You know, it's not going to sway the judge one way or the other, but it may sway the city.
We're encouraging people to show up at that hearing also, to the extent that they're able to. If you have a choice between dialing in and going, please go. I do believe your presence is important, if for no other reason than to stand in solidarity with the community that needs their vote certified. With that, I want to shift gears just a little bit and introduce Karl, the campaign manager for the Rights of Nature Network. I might just go so far as to say this kind of started with the Rights of Nature Network and the Rights of Nature movement. And Karl's been on the Voices for Advocates, I get them confused, before, and talked about the difference between the rights of nature, what the challenges were there with the case in Orlando, and how we got to the place of our individual right to clean water, So Karl, could you speak to that just a little bit about how the Rights of Nature Network started and how the movement progressed?
Yeah, guys, thanks for having me tonight. And you guys are just such a great group of people. I can't even talk to you about how great you guys are. So, I lived in Southwest Florida. I was affected severely by the blue-green algae blooms of Lake Okeechobee, the red tide of 2018. I owned a little waterfront motel. I had my captain's license, so I was financially impacted, emotionally impacted by these toxic conditions that came about. So I started going down the rabbit hole of why and how I can fix it. So 2018, 2019, I was, because I was very vocal in the area in Southwest Florida, I was asked to run for Florida legislature. And I said yes. I was going to run, go to Tallahassee and bring change. And about 2 weeks after I said yes, I found out, I read an article by Thomas Lindsay, who was mentioned earlier. He's with the Center for Environmental and Democratic Rights. CEDAR is the acronym. Thomas's article was a light bulb, an epiphany of change, of how to bring effective change. So the traditional framework is that we elect the right guy that thinks like us. We send that person to represent us either locally, state, nationally, and they're going to help us bring the change that we want. That's the traditional framework. Well, I realized me going to Tallahassee, I was already outnumbered as a Democrat. I was going to have to go convince 140, 160 other guys to think like Karl and to fight for clean water. Well, what I found out is that we have the ability to amend our local charters and our state constitution, even federal constitution, by a petition process. And I thought, wow, I don't need the approval, permission, or help of any politician to bring the change that needs to be done. And this is what's at the core of what's going on in Titusville, the recapture of our right to self-governance. We create the language, we vet the language, we petition, we collect the number of signatures, and we get it on the ballot, and then the voters approve it. So straightforward. On the surface, it seems really easy, and it really is, except it's a daunting task. Locally in Titusville, how many, Mike, you needed what, 1,400 signatures? Yeah. So we tried to do this locally for the Caloosahatchee River. We tried to create a local rights of nature Bill of Rights to give the Caloosahatchee River its own personified, constitutionally framed rights. Well, it's 55,000 signatures in just a few years. That's already gone over like 65,000 because the population is growing so fast. So the key to all this really is funding, because you need to bring awareness. I like to say lack of awareness is our #1 environmental problem. Everybody wants clean water, both sides of the aisles. I don't care if you're red, blue, purple. Everybody realizes that clean water is the deal, right? So what we're asking you to sign for is just so innately built into us to think that we have a right to clean water where we don't. It's an easy thing to do, but it's the lack of awareness and understanding of what this is. Currently there's some opposition out there that's talking about taking your guns away because we want clean water. That's just craziness, right? So what's happening in Titusville with their case is precedent setting for the entire state and even the nation. Green amendments are happening nationally. There was a big win in Montana recently for rights-based protections for the environment. So that's what rights. So rights of nature is to give the ecosystems themselves personified rights, for constitutionally framed rights, and we can do that except in 2020, the state legislature, our own state legislature, decided that at the highest level of rights in Western jurisdiction didn't have a place in Florida law to protect our environment, our own legislators. And that preempted the work that was accomplished in Orange County, and usurped, just by a couple of weeks, usurped the passage of a rights of nature law to protect all the waters of Orange County. So our state legislators made that law ineffective. It's on the books in Orange County. It exists today, but it was made ineffective. That case is in appeal. We had the first test case in the United States where 5 water bodies have acted as plaintiffs, represented by Chuck O'Neill as their voice. That case is still ongoing, just like the Titusville case is ongoing. It's so important to get this done in Titusville to protect our right to self-governance through this petition process. It's got to be done. I ask everybody, I don't care if it's $5, $1, $100, whatever you can send to speak up Titusville to help them with their legal bills, please do it, because it's important. Florida and every state in this nation.
Agreed. Thank you, Karl. I wanted to ask you, what advice or recommendations do you have for local communities and advocates who are striving to establish environmental and clean water rights at their local level?
All right. So since our work as rights of nature was preempted, you have to be real careful about how you structure your wording. Florida has what's called a single subject rule. Mel can speak more to that versus local level versus state level. But it's real important that your language passes muster. It's easy to create a petition. Every local community just you need 2 people to go form a political action committee, and you're on your way to doing this, right? In Florida, there's 20 counties of the 67 organized by charter. The important point of that is those 20 counties hold 74% of the population. So what happens in those 20 counties affects the entire state. So again, it's a tough task. Lee County was 55,000 signatures. The more populous, usually you need 10% of the registered voters of the jurisdiction. So bigger the area, like Dade, Brevard, Hillsborough, that number would be significantly more. But it's easy. You just 2 people just got to take the initiative and launch this. We've built a grassroots. We are Florida Rights of Nature Network, and extrapolated out to Right to Clean Water. We have a network of volunteers, grassroots. Nobody's paid. We're just begging for money to spend it on ourselves. That's not true. We're all volunteers. We've got a network across the state now built out, and we're going to continue this effort until we succeed.
So, Karl, what have been some effective strategies for building that public support and engagement for the environmental rights initiatives like the one in Titusville?
Again, it's bringing the awareness through social media primarily. Unfortunately, social media is not the vehicle you would think it would be, because we're all grouped together through algorithms that people that use the same keywords. If you notice, you make a post on some Facebook group that's got 80,000 members, and who sees it? You only see the comments of your, circle of friends and the people that are frequent posters. You don't reach 80,000 people. So word of mouth, probably. We got people on the bricks every day, working festivals, standing in front of DMVs, events. So building that, mainly word of mouth. And again, it's such an innate thing to have clean water. Everybody wants to get on board with this. If they know about it, they're ready to sign up.
Yep.
So let's talk to Melissa now. Mel, as her friends call her. Hopefully she'll let me call her Mel. I just wanted to ask you, first of all, what inspired you to become an environmental attorney, and can you share some of the experiences that you've had in the field?
Sure. Well, first of all, I would say that my practice had been in the Marine Corps. So as a judge advocate, I only, superficially, very minor, just a few cases had to do with environmental law issues. So I wouldn't call myself an environmental law practitioner, but what inspired me to be an environmentalist, much like other people throughout Florida, this picture right here is Wekiwa Springs. That's my stomping grounds where I was born and raised, like literally 2 minutes away from my home. And so, I actually stomped on those grounds. So it was obviously it's, by default, you have to fall in love with the Florida waters, especially, but Florida environment overall. Just look at it. Come on. So that connection compelled me to, by necessity, when I retired from the Marine Corps and came back to Florida, and I was shocked and awed by how upside down everything was, mostly how government processes allowed for special interests to dictate how to do things in the government. And so coming from being a staff judge advocate in the Marine Corps, and ethics was like number one on our list of all things. Do not let anyone tell you to do anything. Just, I'm in a meeting, babe. Don't let anyone touch your discretion to serve in the public interest only. So to come to Florida where that was flipped on itself was like, okay, what went wrong? Okay, I can see what went wrong. The rules of ethics and transparency and accountability and things like that degraded to a terrible degree. So what I did was really I self-researched. I deep dove into what environmental law in Florida was. Saw plenty of nodes of dysfunction. I would say nodes of vulnerability, which turned into dysfunction. And so that, like for an example, the folks that have the discretion in various agencies to define for themselves what harm means, environmental harm or water harm, or what the public interest is. Those people are unfortunately under the political pressure of special interests through their chain of command. And that's where we are. And that's had rippling consequences on all sorts of issues throughout the state, throughout the water bodies of the state. So when I saw those issues so blatantly, just, okay, that's how we got here. So what needs to happen? We need to have a constitutional level, so in the local government sense, a charter level, clarity of what the public interest is and how to protect it pertaining to water. Just to be abundantly clear. So everything trickles down from that instead of having to fight a brick wall ceiling type of thing. So that in of itself, finding the fact that there is an identifiable problem set with an identifiable clear solution has inspired me to push as long and as far as it needs to go until it happens.
She's a warrior.
That's amazing. Thank you so much. That was so well said. I mean, can you so the rights of nature, the right to clean water. I recently was in a webinar or something with you and Maya Van Rossum speaking about green amendments. And I realized that these all really fall under the umbrella of green amendments. So can you talk a little bit about green amendments and what they are?
Absolutely. So green amendments are constitutional provisions put in the Declaration of Rights article for respective state constitutions. So they're going to, whatever right you create there and you say it's a fundamental right, it's going to be treated like a fundamental right. And in laws, you may be aware of, when you have fundamental rights and then you have other rights, like rights to due process and procedures before your rights are taken away. The government has a process to do various things. Fundamental rights, however, the court review that's triggered is strict scrutiny. So a court has a higher, has a lower deference for government actions when it when it's alleged to have transgressed or infringed upon a fundamental right. So it has to ensure that whatever the government is doing or not doing that's harming your right to clean and healthy environment, or in our case, waters, has to serve, like directly serve a compelling government or state interest. Like for say, an example is supplying drinking water to a community. They need it to survive. That's compelling. In narrowly or by narrowly tailored means, meaning the process of doing that, you have to take measures, preventive measures of unnecessary harm. So however you're pulling water from a system, you leave whatever aquatic ecosystem you can intact, etc. So along those lines, the government has to do a superb job of protecting our interests, our shared interests in our shared waters and water bodies. So the gist of green amendments really brings it home in clarifying that it's not only fundamental, it's precautionary or preventive in nature. They are self-executing. That is a huge thing. Self-executing means it's above the heads of the legislature. It's above the heads of politicians to try to undermine it. They cannot. It's constitutional and self-executing. So, boom, and then everyone, the whole of government can comply with that. Unfortunately, one of our messaging issues has been the fact that Floridians have long-term been socialized to believing a falsity that they have to depend on the politicians to save them. Right. And so when we're talking about a constitutional, I'll just say, when we talk about a petition, first they think it's an online petition they can quickly click and feel good about it, but it's not. It is a petition to change the Florida Constitution, to put this banner in place for good for future generations. And it takes time and money and lots of people to make that happen. So green amendments are that big banner, concrete, solid, self-executing, inherent, indefeasible. No one can take it away from us after it's put in. And it has to do with the highest protections of our natural resources that we can give them.
The challenges that we're seeing in the Titusville right to clean water case, how can that set the stage for what we might experience on the state movement for the right to clean water?
I love the fact that there was general consensus that yes, one, we know what it means by the right to clean water. There's no confusion in that. Two, that we should have the right to clean water. Again, no confusion in the fact that water is the basic lifeblood of not just the human body and all of God's creatures, but Florida's or regional economies, societies, just not just the environment, but you need clean water to have a functioning, thriving community. So everyone got that. And so that was a pocket case of what we have experienced throughout the state, and which is a good sign, which means it's going to pass eventually, right? But yeah, that's the nature of the game. It's like whatever, whenever and wherever people become aware of this opportunity, they're all for it. Honestly, the only hesitation we get are from environmentalists who don't understand that the regulatory system is dysfunctional, or that politicians aren't going to correct the system eventually, which is terribly sad, but it's true. It's been our number one pushback, has been in fellow environmentalists who don't understand what this really is.
There was a lot of confusion initially between the rights of nature and the right to clean water. And I had fellow environmentalists arguing with me that the right to clean water movement was the rights of nature movement and wouldn't even read the petition. So it was really frustrating initially. So I'm really glad to see that we've gotten to this juncture finally. Yeah. Stel and Elizabeth, I've kind of been talking my hat off, so you guys jump in anytime you like. I think we're at a place now where we can probably just casually discuss the issues. I am really encouraged with the outpouring of support that has recently come from the community in Titusville. I'm really glad to see that the attorney can be there. That was a challenge, and a lot of people did not understand the home court advantage in this matter, in any litigation really. And so to have him come, that was all because people donated. So I want to encourage people to donate, but I'm going to kind of take the back seat at this point and let Stella and Elizabeth ask you guys some questions.
Well, I wanted to get something started really quick and just ask each one of you why clean water is so important. I think it's a good thing to point out, because I don't think people realize how much dirty water impacts them directly. A lot of times they think, well, this is an issue, that's their problem over there, it's not our problem over here. That's a Lake Okeechobee thing, that's, or just a lagoon thing. They're not realizing how connected water is and how it impacts us personally. So I would really like to start with, why you fight for clean water. What is it about clean water that impacts you directly?
So I was impacted personally. I mean, my businesses went to zero in Southwest Florida. Nobody came to our motel. Nobody was booking my tours. When I started running tours again, I'm taking my guests past dead manatees tied to the municipal dock that had died from red tide, waiting for pickup. I'm like, look at the osprey over there, hoping, it's like, it was terrible. They're trying to fish on the dock when these algae blooms are piled up and, the wind's blowing this stuff. So clean water is the basis of all economic activity in the state of Florida. Beyond, we wanted to bathe in, to harvest from. It's just vital to our entire life. I'd like to circle back to two things about how local communities can do this. There's 412 towns organized by charter in Florida. So if you live in a chartered town in Florida, just you and your buddy can do this in 412 different towns. And Mel, I got a question for you. Self-execution. We've got that built into the right to clean water at the state level. Is it possible to do self-execution amendments at the local level, so we don't have this Titusville issue?
Unfortunately, the local government is a creature of the state government. That's the reality and the big Achilles heel for the ground up approach. However, the Florida Constitution and Florida statutes have provided plenty of grounds and provisions to create a local substantive right to clean water. So it's possible, but when it comes to self-executing just means they don't need the county commission or the city council to do anything else before it becomes active, before a plaintiff can bring it to court saying, you have violated my rights under this charter amendment. So yes, it is. I believe Titusville is self-executing as well. So, but it's just, that's definitely a provision or a phrase you want to throw in all of the local charters.
Yeah. So the clean water, it's been calculated. Clean water is water activities in the state of Florida, whether it's hunting, fishing, scuba diving, whatever it is the number one economic driver of this state. So it's vital that we get this done.
So we have a little comment down here from a Facebook user, Miss Addison, our collective best friend, Mel, that it impacts everything in our lives, our health, our food supply, and our future generations. And, you had touched on something that I, as a Titusville resident, was personally insulted by the council's actions, in that the idea that we didn't understand what we were voting for. Addison is an incredible young lady, but she is a minor that does not vote yet, and she seems to have a pretty good handle on what clean water means. So, I know that this is a pretty divided place. Well, the world is right now. And I think that I know that as I've been talking to people, oftentimes, whether it's red or blue, I will get, oh, that's something for the other side. That's something for the other side. So, what are you guys' advice to us as we're navigating this here as Titusville residents on how can we kind of bridge that gap to people or explain to them that, like, no, we're not confused and please don't buy this narrative,
I'll go ahead and jump on that only because it's been something that's been important to us from the very beginning is our messaging. And there are certain words and phrases that have triggering properties to fall on either side of this line of tribalism, unfortunately. And yes, words matter, especially these days. So considering that, there are a lot of points to promote, especially when your audience is either highly conservative or just the universal message in of itself. The fact that this is all about our God-given individual rights, right? To protect ourselves, to protect our families. It's a matter of stewardship, the whole creation care issue. It's about fiscal conservatism, because if you take care of the issue at the very forefront, you don't have to pay billions of dollars later on of taxpayer money for someone else's mistake or special interest terrible decision. The fact that this is all about the economy is a big winning argument. But when you bring it down to the average person who doesn't have the luxury of caring, much less being aware of the environmental issues, right? Someone who either goes to school, to work, has a family, comes home, survives, right? Paycheck to paycheck or otherwise. Their touch points with water are what they drink, what they shower in, what they play in recreationally, and where their food comes from, how their food was irrigated. All of those issues are plain, very simple, but core issues that get to the heart of what this is. And it is, hey, stop spreading biosludge over there because, it is creating this mess, or you're bringing a high, unmonitored levels of BMAA from this water source that's completely filled with cyanobacteria. Has anyone checked the BMAA count? No, you don't know what that is? Someone needs to get on top of that, because that stuff messes with your brain and messes with your system, okay, over a long time. And of course, when something happens in 20 years, no one's going to be held accountable. Who's going to be held accountable? No one. Well, you shouldn't have eaten that food. You shouldn't have drank from your faucet. It's your own fault. So we are trying to hit it at the head, at the forefront, which every single person understands and can get on board with. The fact that we have to keep our water source clean, that we drink, that we intake, that we play in, that everything. It has to be non-harmful to us or to our pets who want to walk and play in or even drink from, like a city pond or something that's not being monitored. Things like that. There are so many sad stories that underlie why this is so important. But those are the touch points I would say I recommend to maintain at the forefront.
We've actually covered a lot of those sad stories, and there are too many, unfortunately. Several of us on this panel are what I call exposed to our toxic environment and have permanent injuries as a result. And we all know Stell's journey. She nearly lost her life, and it's something she will fight for the rest of her life as a cancer survivor, as someone who's been diagnosed with an environmental cancer. So I just want to redirect to Mike, because he didn't get to speak on the question that Stell brought up a moment ago, which is what clean water means to you.
Well, my grandparents lived in Bunnell, and I remember coming down from Michigan with my mom and dad when I was 6, 7 years old, and we went to Marineland near Daytona. And I remember going through the aquarium and seeing the fish that were living in the Indian River, and one of them was a sawfish. I'd never seen such a thing in my life, and it just thrilled me to no end. And I actually had, for the next 10 years, I had planned to become a marine biologist before I ended up falling in the black hole of computers. But that said, I came back and moved here to work in the space industry in the late 80s, and I still remember seeing teams of mullet swimming around the lagoon along the shorelines. But I have to tell you that's been diminishing ever since. In the mid 90s, I worked with Jim Egan, the former Marine Resource Council director, and Maureen Roop and a couple others, and we looked at putting a desalinization plant in the lagoon because we knew the problem back then was excess fresh water. Poisonous amounts of fresh water from our stormwater are dropping the salinity in the lagoon, and it was causing change in habitat. And so we thought, well, let's put an RO system in there, and we can put back the effluent. This was their idea, was we'll be putting back the effluent that was already there, even though it's been chemically changed to be something that's not found naturally on the surface of the earth, the effluent from an RO, it had to be dispelled. And they wanted to put it back in the lagoon. And first it was going to be a 30 million gallon water system, and then it became a 5 million gallon water system. And even then the model showed that the whole Banana River would be dead in 2 years because of the excess nutrients that were not just salt. And so from that point on, I began to understand the sensitivity of this environment. But over the next 30 years, it's continued to diminish. And the same people have been in charge. The water management districts and the FDEP and the Army Corps of Engineers. Those are the three, and they're all run through the executive branch in this state. And all three of them are responsible for the situation that we're in. As I see it, I joined the Titusville Environmental Commission over 10 years ago because I wanted to make this change. Because what I saw was a sieve of potential leakages going on. I mean, it's like the whole permitting thing is plugging up a hole. You know, this hole can't leak, but that one can. Well, what is that hole? Well, we don't even know what it is yet because we just made a new chemical and we haven't analyzed it. But we're putting it out there because it works for this, that, and the other thing. And it's absolutely insane that we would be doing this. I know this is, Stell, this is your mantra, but it's what I saw and what I saw happening. I was taking my kids out to the lagoon to go fishing. I can't do that anymore because there aren't any fish to fish for. You know, what there are pufferfish and invasive lionfish and all kinds of crazy things that don't belong there. Dr. Soto left the Marine Resource Council because she believed that the Indian River Lagoon is turning into a non-vertebrate type of ecology, an algae-based ecology. And that's what I'm seeing happening with the lack of regrowth of seagrass and all the efforts that we put in. We're kicking ourselves and shooting ourselves in the other foot at the same time we're trying to make things better. And this law, this I know in Titusville it's a fundamental approach. It's not in the state constitution, but I believe it should be. I believe it should be in the U.S. Constitution, in our federal Bill of Rights. We need to have this right to clean water across this country. And we can start with it locally. As Karl said, there's 400 cities that have charters that every one of them can do this in their own city charter. Every 20 counties can do this in their county charters. And we can make a difference in Florida. And we've got to start here and we've got to carry it through because quite frankly, the alternative is simply unacceptable.
With Stell's work with Forever Chemicals, one of the most discouraging things I've ever read is that rainwater, and all waters start as rain that fall on the continental divide and flow to our sinks and our bathtubs. All rainwater globally is unsafe to drink because of Forever Chemicals. So there you go. That is the most discouraging thing I've ever heard. It's scary, folks.
Yeah. So let's get on the stick. The biggest problem I've seen, and this was a question from earlier, is awareness. I truly believe it's a problem of awareness. when we would go out and hand petitions to people, 9 out of 10 people would sign it straight up. One would walk away. Fine, I'm not going to fight with them. I got the other 9. But the point was that people could see the right to clean water is water that's free of pollution. How complicated is that? Obviously, Titusville City Council thinks that we as the citizens don't understand it. But there's Addison who understands it. Maybe I should take Addison to our mayor and bring her in front of the city council and say, Addison, do you understand what the right to clean water means to you? Because I'd be happy to give her my 3 minutes to hear that and see what
Addison
I'll
would
give
be
her my
glad
3
to
minutes
go.
too.
Addison's watching. Addison, do you hear that? We need you to go to the City of Titusville Council meeting and let them know that you fully understand and comprehend what is in the petition and urge them to certify the voters' votes because you deserve a right to clean water.
Right.
I just want to ask Mel, I had a question on my mind and now I forget what it was. The hearing that's coming up and the right to clean water for Florida, in addition to the right to clean water in Titusville, there are 2 different fundraisers that we're promoting. And we're asking people to make payments through the PayPal to FRONNed, and they will disperse them. So I just want to make everyone aware that when you make your payment through PayPal to FRONNed, if in the memo line you will put Titusville, they will then know that that is what those funds were for, and they'll get them to the Speak Up Titusville to help support the attorney in this cause and their legal fees because they're monumental. I know it's over 25,000 last time I checked. I can't imagine what it is at this point. But I wanted to find out, Mel, what we can do. Oh God, I'm drawing a blank again, you guys. I'm sorry. I've been at work since 6:30. Okay, somebody else take over because I'm totally blanking out at this point.
Well, I want to just point out that we have been putting on the bottom scrolling where you guys can donate to. We have the PayPal, and there's also an address if you want to write a check. I'm doing a call to action tonight, asking everyone to make it a goal of yours to donate between $1 to $5 at minimum to this cause. They have these monumental legal fees. We know how quickly they add up and how stressful that can be. And so if you want to help in any way other than showing up on November 16th to the hearing, donations are greatly appreciated. Unfortunately, it really is upsetting to me that the city is even putting its citizens through this and having to not only using taxpayer money to fight the taxpayers, but now the taxpayers have to raise more money to fight the city. It's quite interesting and insanity, if you ask me. But yeah, go ahead, Mel.
I was only going to add that one of the problems I personally have with this case is that it is in danger of becoming very bad case precedent, meaning any local government, any council or commission who doesn't like what was just passed properly and by the law, by their citizens, which is their right, constitutional right to do, all they have to do is just sue their citizens, and it'll be hung up in court for years. It'll be, basically dependent on whether or not they can come up with the funds to defend themselves. That is unconstitutional for me. And it needs to, I hope the judge recognizes that and touches on that in his opinion, because it is a terrible point in time here.
I remember what I was going to ask you, Belle.
Yeah.
So at the hearing, let's just assume we win.
Okay.
Do they have an ability to appeal?
They do.
Okay. So it's not over.
Oh, no, probably not.
This hearing is likely not the end of it. One side or the other is likely going to appeal.
Yep. If we lose, I would appeal. I wouldn't stand, for another judge to rewrite what Judge Holcomb said.
Yeah, that's another weird thing. You shouldn't have 2 bites at the apple at the same level of
exactly
trial court.
Right.
I also wanted to add really quickly, we were talking about like the monumental bills of this attorney. The attorney is one of the very, very few. The number of public interest law, environmental law attorneys in the state has dwindled down. Why? No one has the money to pay them.
Right.
No one has the money to pay them. So it is his livelihood. And he's already discounting his fees for us because he understands he's with us. He has the same heart and he's championing our cause because he believes in it too. So it is, I just wanted to put that out there. It's expensive, but it's discounted already, and it's for a very critical cause here. It's just
we have a great man in Richard and what he's doing for us and how much he's charging us. I mean, I would really like to. I hope we can keep him going, because I think this thing might go all the way to the state Supreme Court. You know,
and he's a good environmental lawyer.
And he's a good environmental lawyer. I mean,
He's got other records,
you know, other records of win cases. So,
just to give you an example of some cost, I was a plaintiff against the city of Cape Coral to prevent the removal of a boat lock that would allow excessive nutrient loading into the Caloosahatchee, small-toothed saltfish, critical habitat. The city of Cape Coral illegally removed one of these barriers in 2008. Now they want to do it again in Southwest Cape Coral. So as president of the Matlacha Civic Association and some other plaintiffs, we sued the city. Fortunately, we had a local pro bono attorney who has a large law firm in Washington, D.C. Mike Hannon spent probably $100,000 of his firm's resources preparing for that case. We won that case through the Department of Administrative Hearing against the DEP. And that permit to remove that lock was defeated. We won. But what happens is, in these cases, is you've shown the economic actor the defects of their application process. What they do is they go back and they fix it, and they come again. And now you have to go out and sell more cupcakes and cookies for your legal fees to defeat the municipality who's using your taxpayer dollars to shut you up. So the state of Florida, the DEP, and the city of Cape Coral has spent over $600,000 fighting David to prevent the removal of the lock, right? So it's a Goliath-David battle. And Mike is now, Hannon is now going for the second round. You know, I'm sure he's using his firm's resources again. But the state is willing to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to do bad things, you know, against, you know, the will of the people of the jurisdiction. It's craziness.
You know, it's interesting that you say that, because anyone who's watching this that is a taxpayer, they should be watching where their tax money is going and really questioning why the cities are so willing to spend their tax money to do things like this, you know, spending it in legal cases and fighting against voters, basically. This should really be on a lot more people's radar. And I'm surprised there's not a lot more people in the city hall speaking at the podium and bringing these grievances right to the faces of city council in the city of Titusville, demanding that their tax money be paid, used in a better way than towards fighting this legal battle, and to honor the votes that were done in 2022. So we're hitting an hour, and I just want to thank everyone for joining us here on this panel tonight. And you know, your information has been so great. If you guys are just signing in or rewatching this, please, in the comments, wherever you're watching this from, tell us why clean water is so important to you. I hope everyone has a wonderful night.